Good afternoon and welcome to a look at cybersecurity that hopefully won't drive you absolutely batty. It's an area of life where we've been told for a good 30 years or so that we've got to do better with our passwords, got to do better with our security. And if you're anything like me, that's probably gone like in through one ear and out through the other. But today we're going to show you like those things you really have to do in today's world, because let's face it, the cybercrime people are out there, the hackers are out there, and they don't care how big or how small you are or what your personal situation is. They will attack whoever they want to attack to get done what they want to get done. I'm going to share my screen now on that nice light note, and we'll get it underway. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dante St. James, and I guess what we're going to do is really look at the easiest possible way that we can take ourselves from kind of not secure at all to something which is going to cover at least 90% of the situations that may come up in cybersecurity. Got a thing here from Chris Perillo, who is the Intel community advocate. He works as a former TV host for a tech TV show from years ago. Passwords are like underwear. Don't let people see them, change them often, and don't share them with strangers unless you're that way inclined. But that's just a bit of a humorous way to start off. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Digital Solutions Program from the Australian government. It's still running until March 30. So get in all those one-to-ones that you haven't booked yet, get those booked because time is starting to run out. This will be recorded and placed on the Business Station YouTube channel, as well as my own YouTube channel. Just either search for Business Station or my name, and you'll see a whole bunch of videos come up there that we've been presenting. All the materials here are compliant with and taken from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre's Essential 8. Now, what I'm doing is breaking that down for a smaller business to make it a lot easier to understand, because like most government things and like most cyber-related things, there's a lot of jargon involved. And so I'm breaking that down so you don't have to worry so much about that. What we're going to look at is the cost of cybercrime in Australia. That's the sad part. That's how much people are having to pay out and where the damage is. We're going to look at your legal obligations when it comes to cybercrime, because you do actually have quite a set of them. The impact on your insurance, because there is an absolute impact on insurance and not all insurance covers this. And looking at the three things that are going to reduce your exposure risk by 95%. Three things. I know there's like an essential 8 that the Australian Cybersecurity talks about, but they also talk about very large businesses. When it comes to big businesses, it's a lot easier to reduce that risk. And with three little things I'm going to show you today, we're going to do that. A bit about me, if you haven't come across me before, I work with Meta as a lead trainer, Startup Territory as a startup coach, Google's Digital Springboard program, the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions, Workforce. I work with a lot of people. I don't sleep a lot, hence the way I look the way I do. I also work alongside the Australian Cybersecurity Centre's Stay Smart Online. I'm one of their delivery partners for that too. Now, I'm going to have a disclaimer here before we go any further, a very serious disclaimer, because cybersecurity is serious and boring. From now on, a character from the Muppets is going to appear on every single slide. And I've checked every single slide from this point forward, and there is a Muppet. So I also have to say that I don't have permission to use the Muppets images, but I'm going to do them anyway. They can put through a takedown request or a public whipping if they like. That's fine. I don't mind. But Disney owns this, so I'm using their property without permission. Please don't dog me in. Let's party. So the cost of cybercrime in Australia is immense. It's far greater than what we realize it is, simply because we don't hear a lot of those stories. Because if it's a small business, they don't want to talk about it. Back in 2021, it was $33 billion. This is the actual real cost and debt of loss of business, loss of property, cash losses, actual money being taken from accounts, $33 billion just in Australia. This is the kind of impact it's having on our economy. Now, you put that in perspective, right now, the Northern Territory economy is about $28 billion. So it's like taking the whole Northern Territory economy out and it suddenly doesn't exist anymore. That's the size of what's going on here. It's also the same size as Australia's music and performing arts industry. So the entire industry of, any shows you've seen, any plays, any, cinema you've seen, any DVDs you've bought, any live music you've seen out there in concerts or in pubs, that entire industry is about the same as what is lost each year in cybersecurity. So that we're talking about a lot here. It's a massive, massive problem. Now, the sad part is that there's 67,500 reported incidents. These are just the reported ones. We don't actually know the full extent of this because there's a whole lot of people who don't report these incidents, whether they're just really small ones or people are very embarrassed by it. They don't report these situations. So then we're caught with, it could be up to 100 to 120,000. I guess really like 67,500 is not a lot of small businesses. There's so for instance, right across Australia, there is like 2.1 million 2.1 million registered ABNs for businesses. So when you look at 67,500, it's not a lot of them, but it is a fair chunk, especially if you're one of the people who are actually impacted. Now, 75% of the reports that are made are about money loss or the loss of personal information. So it's money out of accounts, credit cards being misused, those phishing accounts where they want you to pay a ransom using something like an iTunes card or something like that. And then loss of personal information as well. So a big chunk of what's going on here is trying to get your personal information to get hold of money or being able to already have that information to access your money. Scary stuff. Now, the average cost to a business of a successful hacking is $50,000. You think about that, what $50,000 would do to you if you had that money, didn't have that money. If you have that money, then suddenly you don't have it. What a difference that make in your business, in your life. If you've got savings that you're putting aside for kids going to university or savings for holidays or weddings or for a home deposit, imagine that just disappearing one day. This is what happens. $50,000 is the average of what is removed. Now, in some cases, it's much larger. I know in Optus's case, that recent hacking they had, that is a much broader thing. And it's going to cost them probably millions of dollars in lost productivity, in fines, in lawsuits from customers. That's going to be in the tens of millions of dollars it's going to cost them. It's going to cause them real big problems. But imagine $50,000 if that just went missing from your bank account. You'd be really annoyed. 22,000 calls have been generated to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre in the past year. So this is last year's numbers in 2021, sorry. So we're talking about a lot of calls being made. That's good that there's been reports for it, that people are aware that this exists. But did you know that the Australian Cybersecurity Office actually existed? Probably not. You probably thought, well, who would I call? You want to call my IT guy? What would I do? But there is actually a helpline to sort of guide you through some of those things. 7,700 websites have been hacked. So that's in terms of the couple of million, or probably about more like 10 million that are in Australia. That's not a huge deal, 7,700. But imagine if it was yours. I've recently had to work through with a client who they didn't have particularly good security in place on their website, and we had to go through 6 months of pain to get them back on track. And that was a primary school that had such a hacked website. We finally got it fixed. We got it moved away. We've got it all secured and it's working just fine now. But that took us 6 months of working against hackers who were actively coming back and re-hacking the site every time we'd fix it. So it was a nasty, nasty situation. And that was on a government web server built by government people. So that was an example of just how insidious this kind of thing, like what would they get out of a primary school? Of all the places to hack, but no, a primary school is where they attacked. When we spread it around, we see that the percentages of how it spreads out, that you've got a big chunk of it where the population centres are. So New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland. Interestingly, that Queensland has a much higher incidence than New South Wales, despite the population disparity, and is similar to the frequency of Victoria. And the reason for that is Queensland's average age is higher than New South Wales and Victoria. So you've got a lot of attacking based upon the ages of people in those particular jurisdictions. So with the older age generally, so you find that 30% isn't evenly spread across all of Queensland. It tends to target very heavily the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast. And two things about the Gold and Sunshine Coast that are very clear is they're both retiree locations, very, very big retiree locations. We find that even in New South Wales, rather than Sydney being the target, it's usually the Central Coast or somewhere, say, in the Illawarra, along those beaches where there's, again, a lot of retirees very actively targeting people who they think are going to be low-hanging fruit or easy to be able to target. Very much the same in Victoria. If you're in a retirement area, you're much more likely to be targeted for cybersecurity breaches than other areas of Victoria, like, say inner Melbourne, where everybody's got an iPhone and has a Mac and knows how to use their stuff, and generally is quite cynical too. So if we break down then all the things that are happening, the biggest areas are fraud related. So where people are trying to scam you through just by fraud. They pretend to be someone else. They get hold of your details, they get your money, and they run. Shopping scams. So they're trying to get you to buy things that don't exist. Online banking scams. Then we get down to, be it small, like the identity theft, investment scams, romance scams, which get quite, I think it was Casey Donovan, the singer, who got scammed very, very heavily in a romance scam. And she was so brave to come out and tell that story about how it happened, because she was really, like, it would be utterly ashamed of that whole story that happened. But she's in a much better place now. But at the time, she lost a lot of money due to somebody who was scamming her out of her money, pretending to be someone who loved her overseas that she'd never met. And whilst we all would say, oh, I'd never fall for something like that, you'd be surprised some of the very intelligent and very smart people out there who have fallen for these scams. As someone who's on dating apps myself quite often, I see them come up all the time. I know how to spot them now, but some of them are very, very convincing in what they're doing. If we look at the spread of businesses that tend to get the kind of scams, we're talking about small businesses getting around about that sort of 8,899 sort of level of what they would generally get scammed for. So they're just under $10,000 per instance. 33,000 for a medium business. Large organizations seem to be a lot smaller, but think about it this way, the potential risk is far larger for a large organization. These are per scam. So it's funny, those medium businesses of 25 or more employees, where they, funnily enough, don't quite have those security measures in place, don't quite have the cyber security measures in place. They are extremely vulnerable. Large organizations tend to have more in place, and small businesses, which are not generally targeted as often, then also have a risk profile in there. So we've got a whole lot of numbers in here, and you get it, it's bad. So how does this impact you, everybody on this call, as a small business? You have legal obligations, basically. You need to know about this stuff, because you can't just say, oh, I didn't know, when something happens and someone decides to sue you, or a government agency decides they're going to fine you for it. Ignorance is not innocence. If you're ignorant of a law, you don't know it exists, you're not innocent. It's your job as a business owner to know what your legal obligations are. Luckily, we're here to tell you about what those might be. So your legal obligations, that the ASIC, or the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, that's where you got your business name from and where your ABN is registered. They can take legal action against any business of any size that fails to take reasonable steps to protect personal and financial information from being stolen. So if you're a bookkeeper, an accountant, you have a lot of financial information on there. If you're a life coach, if you're someone who holds personal information about your clients in a customer relationship management or CRM system, say for instance, ClickUp or Asana or Trello or Monday or HubSpot, any of those sort of things. If you haven't taken reasonable steps to protect the access to that system, and someone breaks in, gets that information and uses it against someone, you actually can be fined by the ASIC. So it's not like it doesn't happen. It's not often that it happens, because it's actually pretty hard to prove that someone hasn't taken reasonable steps. But what you want to do is make sure you're not the one who didn't take reasonable steps. And by reasonable steps, they mean things like two-factor authentication, making sure that old staff no longer have access to your systems, all those kind of very easy, reasonable steps that would stop someone from getting in there. So that's number one. The second layer that could do it, the ACCC can take legal action against businesses that share personal and health-related information with other people without consent. So this is where, for instance, you are, say, sharing information that you have knowingly shared from your database out to people who, no one's actually authorized you to share that out to them. Or if that information is taken from your database by a hacker and shared with someone else, you are still liable for that. And the kind of fines we're looking at in here are the tens to the hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how big your list happens to be. Now, that is a pretty scary thing. This usually through the ACCC doesn't really like to play with small businesses. It plays with big businesses. It tries to keep big businesses that have a much bigger risk profile in terms of the number of people it could impact and the number and the amount of money that it could actually involve. They tend to go after them. They don't really go after small businesses. So that's not one to really worry that much. But the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner can take legal action against businesses for failing to prevent unauthorized third parties from accessing your customer's personal information in a cyber attack. Now, this is the one that's most likely to come up as a fine or as something where a government entity will try to recoup some damages from a business that hasn't taken the right kind of steps to protect things. Now, this one here is where you haven't put anything in place at all. So let's say, for instance, you've got a database that you use that's in one of those customer relationship management systems. You have very deliberately chosen not to put a second factor authentication in there. You decide, oh no, that's too much trouble. It's too much hassle. I can't do that. So I'm going to not do it. So if you've not done that, then you are liable. If you haven't put, if you've put like a password, which was so easily guessed because it was like Brooke123, because Brooke is your daughter, granddaughter, or dog, then you've made it a super simple thing for someone to look at the desk and see the photo of your grandchild, Brooke, and then go, oh, I'll try Brooke123, and they get in. That's preventing unauthorized third parties from accessing, or even having no password at all. So many people do, they leave it saved in the browser, and so that anyone who gets on your computer or on your phone can just open it up and go for it. And you've got no, login, no password, no lock screen for your phone. You will be liable for this. And these kind of fines are quite severe, again, in the tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars per record that is potentially made open to cyber attack. So again, these are not little things. It might seem like, oh, it seems like such a hassle to have a password manager. Oh, it's too hard to have a second factor authentication and having to send me a message on my phone every time I want to log into my stuff. When you put it in perspective of how much this could cost you, this is where it gets really severe. So that's why we sort of harp on for the last 30 years about getting your passwords right, getting this cybersecurity stuff together, because you would think that mostly this is going to be aimed at big businesses, but it's not. In 2021, yes, most attention was on big businesses, but by 2025, there's going to be a much bigger increased small business focus. And the reason for that is because how many businesses are small businesses, and the increasing incidences of people getting hacked who are small businesses. What we're seeing is that, because it's low-hanging fruit and it's easy, very simple automated processes and bots can be used to try and find weaknesses in people's logins for various things, whether it's an old Joomla website or an old WordPress website, or if it's your Facebook account. Oh my goodness, your Facebook account is probably the most heavily hacked thing of all things, simply because it gives access to so much stuff and causes so much disruption to a small business. You imagine not being able to access your Facebook page anymore, not being able to promote your business, not being able to take queries from customers through either Google or Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. It's a massive hassle. So the Australian Cybersecurity Centre is definitely focusing on small businesses more and more, particularly towards 2025, when pretty much the main focus will be small businesses. 96% of all businesses are small businesses, and that's why they're going to put that on there. So you think, well, that's okay, I've got business insurance, this will handle all this stuff. No, it won't. In very, very few cases does insurance do it. Public liability insurance does not cover cybersecurity incidents. Public liability is to do with injury. It's to do with people who slip over, fall, and hurt themselves, and you've got the insurance to be able to cope with that in your premises, or if you're doing things out of a food truck at a festival, then you need public liability insurance for that. But it will not cover any form of cyber attack or cyber breach. Your business contents insurance, if you've got that for a premises, will not cover this either. And that kind of goes without saying. It's not designed to cover activities. It's designed to cover the physical context. The general business insurance won't do this unless it's packaged in with another kind of insurance. And we'll look at those in a second. So professional indemnity insurance is a bit of a funny one. What it will do is cover the client data loss. So if you're getting a fine, if you're getting someone wants to take you to court because you expose their data to an unauthorized breach, well then yes, it will actually probably cover that within reason. Now you have to have shown for your insurer that you've taken steps to make sure that people can't break into things. So the person who broke in is obviously just a superhuman who can just get through all those things that you put in place. So it's not going to cover you if you've taken no steps. Like if you've taken absolutely no steps whatsoever to stop people from being able to get into your stuff, well, then they're probably not going to pay that out, because they'll look at that and go and say that you've actually not shown any sort of due diligence yourself. Mind you, the insurer also hasn't done that either. So you might be in for a lengthy court battle, but who has time or the money to be doing that? The other place where it doesn't cover is for your own data loss. So for instance, if you've got all your intellectual property, all of your stuff all your courses that you've put together that are in a place where someone can get into them and they've been able to rip them off and take them away and delete them from you, and they've taken ownership of everything, and they've taken control of all your Facebook accounts and your Instagram accounts and LinkedIn accounts, you're not covered for that, not with professional indemnity insurance. Remember that professional indemnity insurance is all about covering the damage to your clients, not the damage to you. Where we get into the damage to you is a thing called cybersecurity insurance. But this is only for you if you lose your intellectual property, your systems, access to your things, not able to, loss of business that's through, having a lack of access to your Facebook account, that sort of thing may be covered. But ultimately, it's not going to cover you. And it's not going to pay out if they can show that you have not taken any reasonable steps to protect yourself. This is only a backup. It's not a replacement for doing the work of securing your systems and securing the things that you want to protect in your business. So this is all very scary, to be honest. A lot of these cybersecurity insurances include incident response teams. There's a lot of words on that screen, but basically what we're saying, they've got different levels of assistance that can help you out, like 24/7 phone lines. They can get specialists to come in and look at your servers and look at your equipment to see what they can get back. It also covers like loss of net profit, so loss of your takings due to the business interruption that happens when you've had any sort of downtime on your systems. Also for fines and penalties coming from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, the ACCC, the Signals Directorate, any of those places which are protecting consumers from businesses that have not done the right thing. Whew. So that's exhausting. When I think of all of that, I go, what's the good news? Well, you can reduce your risk by 95%, Kermit, by doing 3 very simple things. And these are taken from the Australian Signal Directorate's Australian Cybersecurity Centre, which is all about this stuff. They've set up what's called an Essential 8. That Essential 8 are the things that they say are essential for protecting your data, your cyber footprint from cyber criminals as a business. Now, I know from looking at the Essential 8, it's far too hard. I don't know of any company that covers all of it. It's far too hard for a business to really cover and still operate as a business without becoming a cybersecurity business. What it does do is has 3 things that you can do. And the first one is updating your devices. I don't know how many times I've been into a client's website and seen that they do not update their WordPress plugins or their WordPress core files. And they go, oh, I didn't know what that was, so I just left it. It's like, that's not an excuse. That is the number one thing that leads to hacked WordPress sites. WordPress is the most hacked website system in the world because it's the most used website system in the world. So it's pretty at risk. So we look at the updating your devices includes updating your phone, updating your iPad, updating your laptop. Running on Windows Vista is no excuse. You need to update the systems on that. I know it's annoying when Windows decides that it wants to do an update. I know it's annoying when Mac says, oh, I need to do an update straight away. There's a reason why these updates come through. They're not there to annoy you. They're there to keep you safe. The reason why they do updates most of the time, apart from new features, is because hackers have found a way to get into your device. So they send out an update which blocks that window off. So there's no longer an open door for hackers. They can't just get into your device as easily as what they did before. Doesn't matter whether you've got an iPhone, an Android phone, a Windows phone, they don't even exist anymore, a Mac, a PC, an iPad, an Android tablet. Doesn't matter what the device is. When an Android update comes through, or a Samsung update comes through, or an LG update comes through, an Apple update comes through, you must run those updates because it will help to protect you particularly when you're online, for people to just sort of slice straight through all the protections and shoot a cannonball straight through to the heart of your business's data. So please update your devices. And that involves, everything to do with laptops, mobiles, web servers, if you have one. Some businesses, particularly financial systems, tend to have on-site web servers. I would say also your home assistants. Now, the reason why I say that is because things like Google Home, HomePods from Apple, Amazon Echo products, they all have updates that run. Now, thankfully, these things usually run on their own. They don't require you to say yes or no to them. They happen while you're not there, usually. But some people have turned off options that allow updates for some reason or other, because they think that someone's watching them. The irony is that by not putting those updates through, you're far more at risk of someone being able to use those devices in your home to be able to watch you. The same thing goes for security camera systems. If you've got internet connected security camera systems, they require what are called firmware updates quite frequently, as well as software updates for the control software, which could be an app on your phone or a particular system on your computer. So these things all do require updating. Now, the last thing you want is an indoors and outdoors security system with cameras monitoring your home, and then someone gets access to that and they're watching you. There was a very freaky thing that happened with Amazon Echo products at one stage, where there was if an update hadn't been done, it was very easy for hackers to be able to access the microphone and speaker and actually speak to you through that. It was very, very creepy. There's lots of cases that have been recorded online of that happened, and being able to say, I can see you, you're in the red shirt by the window. I'm telling you now that you need to pay me 1 Bitcoin through to this email address. Otherwise I'll expose your house to others. And it was just creepy, horrible stuff to have to go through for people. But this is what happens when you don't update your devices. So if you're a security, if you're a bit paranoid about security, just go away and update your devices, update your websites, all that sort of stuff, because it really does make a difference. The next one is probably the one that people hate the most, is multi-factor authentication or second factor authentication. What it basically means is that your password is no longer enough. You need to have a password plus a second factor that goes and verifies that you are who you say you are. It's usually in the form of SMS, a authenticator app, which is what I use for all of mine, or it could be an email. Now, when it comes to multi-factor authentication, there's good, there's better, and there's best. A second email account that's not your regular account email as a second factor is pretty good, because, if someone breaks into your first email, then if they can then verify that they are you through that same email account, well, then you're screwed. But if you've got a second email account that they don't have access to, then it's possible to do that. So I would do that in Facebook today. Go into Facebook at the end of this call and go to your privacy settings and your account settings in Facebook and nominate a second email address, so that if someone tries to reset your password to get into your Facebook account or your Instagram account or your any account at all, it will then alert you through both of those things. So they may get through one, but you still got access through the other. So it's not a great way to protect yourself. The far better way to do it is by having it send an SMS to your phone. The reason for that is that you have your phone with you. It's right here with you. So with your phone being right here with you, then you're allowed to have, you've got something which hackers don't have access to. They cannot access your phone. It's a bit different in America. We've got things called burner phones, which people can use to, protect their privacy, make calls, not be tracked, and then throw out the phone and it's gone. In your case, we don't have those in Australia. Every single phone is registered to a person, and it's known who that person's going to be. So nobody can be you with your phone unless they've got hold of your phone and know how to unlock it. So that's a much safer way of having that second factor of authentication. And what it will usually send you is a code through SMS to your phone. Or in some cases, we'll send an actual call to your phone and give you a code via audio over the phone so you can use that. Now, the best way of protecting yourself takes you out of the realm of all this phone stuff altogether and puts it on what is called an authenticator app. There's many of these. There's one, I use the Google Authenticator as my primary one because it goes across my many Android phones. There's also LastPass Authenticator, Windows Authenticator. Apple doesn't have one yet, but there's others that do. So a lot of the other password managers like NordVPN, NordPass, OnePass, all those sort of systems have these authenticator apps. I use Google because it's just an easy one to remember, Google Authenticator, because we use Google every day. So if you look for the Google Authenticator app, put it on there and it'll get you to scan a QR code for a website that you access or a system that you access. And then it comes up and it says, okay, I've now got this in here. Every time you log in now, it's going to ask you to check this app to get this 3-digit code. That is the best way to do it. Now, yes, it does sound like an extra step you have to take when you're logging in the morning, but consider the alternative. A 5-second process to check your phone and get a code and put it in, or $50,000 out of your bank account. I think I know the option I prefer. And honestly, I've gone past the mobile SMS thing now to the authenticator app thing, simply because there's no way that someone can get that. There's no way, unless they're peeking over my shoulder, they could get that. And who's going to be peeking over my shoulder anyway? Like, I've got a blank wall behind me, unless there's a little pinprick in the wall, Maxwell Smart style, spying on me. It's just not going to happen. So that multi-factor authentication, vitally important. Please do not ignore it. The third thing you need to do is backing up. And this is one of those ones who have been going on about for 30 years and saying, back up your data, but no one seems to know what back up your data means. If you've got a website, make sure it backs up every night with the web server, with the web host. If you're with a cheap, nasty web host that doesn't do it, get away from them and go to one that's good. Things like Ventura IP here in Australia does nightly backups included with your account. SiteGround does nightly backups that are included with your account. Digital Pacific, again, does nightly backups that are included with your account. Things like Bluehost, HostGator, you're taking risks. When you get really cheap web hosting for your website, there's a risk that those backups aren't happening. You may be able to call them and say, oh, yes, I want to restore my website. But the problem may be is you can't restore that website because it's already too far gone. So if you want to get that done up front, do that up front. The other thing is for things like your, not storing things on your computer, basically. So stop storing documents on your computer and start storing them in the cloud. The reason we store them in the cloud is that if you get hacked on one computer, you can get into it from another, or from a phone, or from an iPad. So when you're backing up your data, we're talking about putting it somewhere that's off your current device. So not keeping all your files sitting there on your computer, put it somewhere where someone who even has access to your computer needs to go through passwords in order to get into the stuff that's there. So backing up your emails, there are both Outlook and Google have methods for doing that. Google keeps all your emails anyway through Gmail and through Google Workspace. Office 365 or Microsoft 365 does a very similar thing, but I would not be necessarily leaving it to chance for those services to do the work for you. I would do that yourself. All your files are on your computer should be stored in something like Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive or SharePoint. Have somewhere where you have to go to get the files, not just on your computer. Backing up your website, that's the first thing I talked about. That's the ultimate in there. There's been a few times now where I've had cybersecurity incidents with clients where I've been bloody glad I had that backup of the website, because I just simply go, click a button, say restore to yesterday's backup, and the website comes straight back up and gives me time to then go and work on what the intrusion was so I can stop it from happening again. In the meantime, the customer hasn't been impacted with a website that isn't available. You can also download your Facebook data. So if you, before you decide you're going to quit Facebook and run away from it because you hate it and you think it's all a big, horrible mess, you can go in into your data and privacy settings in Facebook and download all your data, all your photos, all your posts, everything, all your information can be downloaded into a file that you can then, if you wish to, re-upload to your account later. So you imagine, right? If you got hacked, your whole account got hacked, You couldn't get into all those amazing photos you took of that trip you took in 2014 when you went away to, I don't know, America and travel around for 17 days. This is an oddly specific example because it happened to me. I did not download my Facebook data because that didn't exist back in 2014. So when I got hacked in 2018, when this thing had just started existing, I didn't know about it. And I lost all my photos from those trips, all the trips before it, to Bali, to Vanuatu. From the beginning of Facebook, when I first joined, I'd lost all that information, all those files, all those, because I used Facebook as a place to save all my memories. Big mistake. Won't do that again. So now what I do is once a month, I've got a prompt on my calendar that automatically says, go and download your Facebook data. And I do it. And then I store it up in Google Cloud or in Google Drive. And then I've got it there if I need it. Now, does it take up a lot of space? Yeah, sure it does. And so I delete the last one and then put in the new one. Whole process takes me less than 10 minutes once a month, but I know that my Facebook data is safe. So if I get hacked, if I lose access to my account, I've got all the things that I wanted to keep. Those three things will give you a 95% protection from cybersecurity breaches. Just those three things. Everything else that's in as part of what we call the Essential 8 from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre are difficult things to do that are not necessarily within the realms of a small business to be able to do. But you could get these three things alone and have 95% better protection from cybersecurity breaches. This will probably mean you'll never be, I'll gently say it, not too definitively say it, but you do these things, you'll probably not get hacked. Because the way for someone to hack around the following things that get in that final 5% are so difficult that most cybersecurity people don't bother trying to get through there. Most cyber criminals won't bother or take the time it would take to go around those last few things. So just do those three and you've blocked out 95% of the cases where you might be done. It's going to block you. It's going to help you out with email hacks. It's going to help you out with those Facebook profile hacks and the page takeovers and the Instagram profile takeovers and all the identity theft. All those things are going to be essentially much, much safer if you just do those three things. So it's kind of worth getting the Authenticator app on your phone or having a second factor of authentication where someone sends you a code through your SMS and then you log in with that code to whatever it is you're logging into on your computer. This is not really a lot of stuff that's going to really take a lot of energy. Brenda's just asking what those three things are again. So the first one is updating your devices. So all the Windows updates, Mac updates, iOS updates, Android updates, any software updates you've got, Word updates, like for Word, Excel and PowerPoint, any software you've got a computer, make sure it's updated. When it asks you to update it, do it at least within a couple of days. Perfectly, you want to do it within 24 hours. So I've got things like Adobe Creative Suite that I need to update when it says it needs updating. So any of those sort of things, they need updating for a very good reason. Second one is using multi-factor authentication. So that's using the second email address, the phone number, or the Authenticator app as giving you a code that allows you to then to log into your systems. So you don't just log in with username and password, you log in with username, password, and then it prompts you for that second authentication factor, which is in most cases, I'll probably say it's probably going to be an SMS to your phone. The third one, let's get there, is making sure you back up all your files. Back up all that data, back up your emails, back up everything you possibly can by using things like Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, those cloud-based programs. They do most of that for you. They're always going to have backups ready for you to go with, particularly if you're in an organization where they have cybersecurity as one of their principles and they want to do as a business. That will be a lot easier. But in the case of small business where you are the admin of it, just making sure that you get some help from Microsoft or Google to make sure that there are ways to back up your email. If it's not your email and it's just your Facebook stuff, you can download your Facebook information. You can use any sort of system you use. Make sure it's backed up. All your Word documents, all your PowerPoint presentations, all that sort of thing. I don't really use PowerPoint anymore. And I also don't use Microsoft Word simply because I'm able to then go and do that through things like Canva now or through Google Docs and those kind of areas. Kylie's saying, should you let Microsoft Edge save your passwords for websites? You don't have to remember them all. You can use that as a password manager. I use a thing called LastPass because then it lets me go not just on my computer, but it also lets me use it on my phone, on my iPad, on my second laptop. So I've got access to all my passwords through there. So all you need to do is remember one password that will get you into all of your passwords. Now that one password can't be Brooke123 or Kylie XYZ. It's got to be something that's pretty hefty. So what I usually do is I choose a phrase from a poem or from a book that I know, like a sentence. So it's a whole sentence. And then I just change a couple of things. So if it's somewhere like, I don't know, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. But every time it's an A, it's a 4, for instance. So something which I can remember just like that. That becomes my big major one, but I changed just enough in it that makes it so it's not quite so obvious that they just run a scan of, popular literary for the last 100 years and just go, yeah, just apply this to all of our attempts to attack someone. So that's the 3 major ones you do. Let's go back through that again. Here's where we were. Now, if you do get hacked, what do you do about it? Now, this is something which I hope never, ever happens to you. It has happened to me. It's happened to a number of my friends and associates and colleagues. I really hope it doesn't happen to you. The first thing you need to do is whatever it has been that's been compromised, it almost always will be your email that's been hacked, even if the first thing you hear about it is that your Facebook's being hacked. So the first thing you need to do is go and change the password for your email address, and then change the passwords for the things that you can see have been impacted, like your Facebook or your Instagram account or something like that. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is to enable multi-factor authentication on there. Carmel's just saying about the recent breach with LastPass. No, there was just someone who's trying to use your master password means that that they do know your master password, but that wouldn't come necessarily from the breach. The recent breach didn't involve passwords; it involved customer details. So it wasn't such a big, like, I haven't had any problem with mine. That breach wasn't a password vault breach, so nobody really knows your password. Although someone looks like in your case, looks like they have actually guessed what your password is. In some way, so it may not be a particularly secure password. So you need to make sure you do change your master password to stop that from happening. LastPass is stopping it because you've obviously got second factor authentication on there. So even if they've got your master password, you still need to go through and get the authenticator, or it sends you like an email to your email address to say, hey, you need to, is this you? If it is, you need to put this code in. So what's happening, the person who's trying to get in, Carmel, doesn't know that information. They can't access your email address. So you need to change your password straight away to something a little bit more harsh, and that will stop that from happening. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Carmel. That's a very, very good point. So the enabling the multi-factor authentication where you can is that phone message, the SMS message, the authenticator app, any of those things will stop someone from getting in again. Just by changing your password may not be enough, because they may already have access to the place where you usually verify your password changes, which is your email address. So if they've already got access to your email address, change that to multi-factor authentication so that you can only get through if you get the code that comes up on your phone, either through the authenticator app or through SMS. Either one's going to be good for you. Probably SMS is probably the best one for you, because that's the one thing that you're probably going to be able to easily access without another app on your phone. The next thing you need to do after you've made that enabled the multi-factor authentication is you contact your provider to report the hack. Now, the provider being someone like, Google, if it's Gmail, Facebook, if it's Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/hacked, that's where you report whether you've been hacked or not. Google has similar things. Just Google it, say, report hacked Gmail account or something like that. Same with Microsoft. Let Microsoft know that you've been hacked, and they'll give you next steps to perform to resecure your account. Even if it's been taken away from you, they can start that process. And then I'd say the fourth thing to do is go to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre at acsc.gov.au and then report it to them. That's like reporting it to the police. So you report it to them to say, this is something that's happened. It's been breached. I may have had no damage to it yet, but I'm just letting you know it's happened, so that if there is any greater damage, then you at least have that report in place. This is also very important for your insurance. If something does happen and you lose, you lose money, you lose a lot of loss of trading because you can't access systems. Having that report into the ACSC as part of the process, the insurer would have to verify that you're doing the right things. So first thing, I'll go back through that again. Change your password if you can. Then move on to enable multi-factor authentication if you're able to. You should be able to. Then make sure you contact the provider of the thing that's been hacked, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, whoever it is that you've been hacked through, and then report it to the ACSC, Australian Cyber Security Centre. That will then put you on all the right position with the insurance companies for them to know that, oh yes, you've taken all the right steps to get there. Now, the fifth one is a further thing. Chances are if you use the same password everywhere, then they're going to get into everything. It's not very hard for them to do it. They'll have usually these automated scripts that go, oh, I got in using this combination on email. Let's try Facebook. Oh, I got into that too. Let's try into, oh, I got into that too. And it'll keep going until it finds no more things to be able to log into. This is the absolute error. You don't want this to happen. You don't want it to be so that you get into one thing, you get into everything. So check all your other accounts and systems. So the takeaways from this one are, the cyber criminals will come. They're not ignoring small business. They are looking at small business as a low-hanging fruit, as an easy place to attack. You do have legal responsibilities. I'd hate to say it, and I'd hate to see anyone in this position, but not knowing that you have legal responsibilities doesn't excuse you from the liability. Most of your insurance is not going to cover this. Remember, it's cybersecurity insurance will cover you for the loss of your data and the loss of your business due to those hackings, but it will not compensate your clients or your customers if their details are stolen and used. What you would need for that is professional indemnity insurance. So there are two things you should have as someone who's working with anything online or with systems online, is cybersecurity insurance and professional indemnity insurance. Particularly if you provide advice to people in what you do, your services are something that helps them to grow their businesses. Like you might be a copywriter, a graphic designer, or a web designer, any of those things. Make sure you update your devices, add multi-factor authentication, even though it's annoying, and then back up your data. And when it happens and you happen to be hacked, act quickly. Contact the provider, secure your accounts, check all the other accounts, report it to the ACSC so that then you can begin that process that'll help you to get things back from the insurer. So if all this sounds a bit too much, you want to go through it with someone, you can. We've got plenty of cybersecurity people on with the Digital Solutions program, and you can get all kinds of support you need with kinds of additional digital technology just by making sure you register with us. If you haven't already, at businessstation.com.au, it gets you 3 one-to-one advisory hours with us, so you can work through those things. If you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, cybersecurity, or anything to do with Facebook, Instagram, using your laptops, using your phones, Zero, MyOb, any of those systems that are used digitally to be able to grow your business, then you can accept one of our workshops or webinars. So you get more than 4 hours. You get as many as you want, pretty much, all for $44. So that's not $44 per hour. That's $44 once off, gets you access to all of that. So please do take advantage of that, because there's plenty of opportunities for you to do better with digital stuff, whether it's in cybersecurity, whether it's with social media, your website, anything like that. We're here to help you. If you'd like to reach out to me at all, my details are on the screen. I'm probably easy to get hold of on LinkedIn, and I love new followers and new people to interact with on LinkedIn. So please do catch up with me there. Just look for my name. It's a pretty rare one. It's a pretty stupid name, to be honest, but it's easy to find on these systems. So please do reach out if you do want to. If there's no other questions to go through, or if you do have a question, just send them to me. I'm happy to answer those offline as well. Thank you so much. We've got an early mark. That's great. It's only, you've still got another, 12 minutes to go before so I reckon go make a coffee, sit down, maybe just go have a shower. You know how good it is to have a shower in the middle of the day? It's such a fun thing to do. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a fantastic week. I'm Dante St. James. I'll see you soon.